Alright guys, I'm Leo in Tivu and this is my acetylcholinesterase assay data interpretation presentation. A mouthful. I know it is a mouthful, but it's got a name on it, okay? Research questions and hypotheses. Does manipulation of diet affect resistance to naloxone and other pesticides? If it does have an effect, what resists the most to the inhibitor and what doesn't? The null hypothesis is diet of mealworms does not affect their resistance to naloxone. My hypothesis, this is the one with the reasoning behind it, diet of mealworms does affect one's resistance due to the organism's ability to detoxify chemicals, regulate gut health, and determine the volume of chemical ingestion, which all of these are factors made up from the diet if it wasn't already explained in the sentence right there. Okay, this is the experimental design. 4 groups of mealworms were cultured. In reality, we had tons of groups, or tons of like petri dishes of groups, but there was 4 main groups. First one was a protein-based diet, the second was a carb-based diet, third was a lipid-based diet, and the fourth was a control. This experiment spanned 2 weeks, 2 whole weeks. After the 2-week mark, the mealworm data was collected via acetylcholinesterase assay, which is when we split them up and we gave them the naloxone, see if it worked or not, see what inhibited, what it didn't, through absorbance. It's long, very long process. Okay guys, this is the graph of inhibition to naloxone based on diet. So what does that mean? Inhibition is basically how much the enzyme like inhibited the movement on where it binded to. So basically how the pesticide kills the mealworms. So the higher the inhibition, the higher the pesticide naloxone worked basically on the mealworm, because it inhibited movement and it locked the muscles of the mealworm in place and it couldn't move. So as we see, going left to right, our carb, control, lipid, and protein. What do we see? We see the lipid stands out especially high on the inhibition, meaning the lipid high diets, just looking off this graph before we get into any of the stats, was the group that was affected the most by the naloxone, if we go based off the graph. Now we're going to go into the numbers and the hard parts about it that actually matter the most, because I can't just look at the graph and say one thing, but I can have a thought and we can act on it. This is the data basically, like that made the graph up, okay? So we see our initial p-value, overarching p-value, is 0.000627. Keep in mind for later, okay? And we look at our p-values for comparing 2 groups together, and the biggest p-value is the protein to carb. They're extremely similar, almost identical. And now the smallest value is the lipid and control. And actually, the smallest values on this table are the ones that involve the lipid, if you look. Lipid carb, lipid control, and lipid protein. They have the smallest p-values, meaning they are statistically different. This was the 2 key. So, our p-value is really, really small. Our 2 key analyses between the lipid values are really, really small, meaning the data is not statistically different. Sorry, I misspoke. The data is statistically different because it's less than 0.05. Meaning we reject our null hypothesis and go with, maybe not to a T, but we just reject our original null hypothesis. Meaning diet does have an effect on one's ability to fight off naloxone or resist to it. This is my code from our studio. You can copy it, do whatever, run it just as like a... These are my references, and that was it. Leo in Tivu, out.